Excel Language School. A real passion for learning.
Hi, today we're going to talk about this essay, and this essay was written by a Vietnamese student and graded by a professional IELTS grader. Now, if you look at the piece of paper, you will see the grader put her system at the top, and her system is that everything that is highlighted in red is completely wrong. It's grammatically incorrect or the wrong word, and everything that is highlighted in yellow is writing that is okay, but a native speaker probably wouldn't write it like that, so it's possible to make it better. Next to that, there are the green letters, and the green letters are the reviewer's suggestions for improvement. It's what the reviewer thinks you should have written. The red letters are the reviewer's comment. They are not intended to be part of the essay. On the right-hand side, there's a part that talks about underlining collocations, but there are no collocations in this essay, so you don't have to worry about that. And the second line talks about Microsoft Word picking up spelling errors, but in this case there are no spelling errors in this essay. So let's look at the test question that you have to write about. And the test question is, some people think that environmental problems are too big for individuals to solve. Others believe individuals can also do some things to solve these problems. Discuss both views and give your opinion. Okay, so let's start with the first paragraph, and the first paragraph starts with the words, these days. Okay, and so on the first line of this paragraph, the student wrote, the main concern in many countries, right? And the grader marked it wrong and said that it was supposed to be correct, the main concern of many countries. So, the question is, which is correct, of or in? Now, the grader thinks that of is correct, but my opinion is that they are both correct, right? And so, how do I come to this opinion? Do I just decide, oh, I am a native speaker of English, I know everything? No, I like to check. And in a situation like this, there is a great tool online that you can use. It's free. And this tool is called Google Ngram. Google Ngram. And if you put in the words Google Ngram, N-G-R-A-M, into Google search, it will be the first item that comes up. And this is a great tool because it shows you how frequently words and phrases appear in Google's enormous database of books. And so I often use it to check to see if my opinion of the English language is correct. Now you will see in this example that I've searched the phrases concern in many countries and concern of many countries, and the program compares how often it is used in books between 1940 and 2008. And the result is the word in this case, is used 12 to 14 times more frequently than the word of. So my conclusion from this is that in is a perfectly fine way to say it, that is, the way the student wrote it is correct, and so it may be even better than the teacher's correction. Okay, and so that's enough about the first line. Let's go on to the rest of the paragraph. And in the second line, the grader says, this is nice style, which it is, I completely agree. And for example, the student wrote, so great are these problems that, and they changed the place of the subject and verb, which is grammatical and also very nice style. Notice that these problems are so great that, you could write it like that, and that's also okay. So at the end of the paragraph, the grader suggests the word these instead of the word the, and I think that's certainly an improvement. And the correct use of referencing language, that's words like these, those, this, that, is definitely something that you want to get correct if you want to get a band 7 or higher on the IELTS. And the last line of this paragraph, offering a conclusion, which is what the grader suggests, is better than a conclusion is reached, because, first of all, it's shorter, and second, it's good to avoid using passive voice whenever you can. Okay, so let's move on to the second paragraph, which starts with the words, on the other hand, it is clear. Now, the grader makes several corrections in this paragraph, and the first one she makes is she adds the definite article in the third line. Now, when I say the word the definite article, that means the word the, and that grammar point, the definite article, the word the, is always very difficult for my Vietnamese students to master, because there really isn't anything like this grammar point in Vietnamese. And so you really have to understand it at a very basic level. You can't just be translating from your native language. So, the first 4.5 lines are very good, but the paragraph falls apart a little at the end. The student writes, as a consequences are no doubt destructive, and so there is first a careless grammar error when the student uses a and makes a plural word after that. That's never correct. Also, it's difficult to tell exactly what the student wanted to say when they wrote no doubted destructive, and that's why the grader put question marks afterwards. She just doesn't understand it. And in the last sentence, the student makes a little mistake with verb tense, puts could instead of can. Can is a better word because you're talking about how people feel today in the present tense. And the last item is them. The pronoun them is better than it, because it refers to two things, that is, 1, sea levels, and 2, higher temperatures. Okay, and so let's move on to the third paragraph, and the third paragraph is the paragraph that starts with the words, on the other hand, there are some, and one problem that I feel is that makes 2 paragraphs in a row that both start with the word on the other hand. And I think that's something you want to avoid. Maybe you have the first paragraph says on one hand and then the second one on the other hand. But generally you don't want to use the same transition twice in an essay. It's not an enormous mistake, but it doesn't look very good, right? And so the fifth line here, maybe it's a little confusing to look at, but I think the grader means that she wants the student to move the phrase that says instead of using their private cars, and instead of before the words use public transportation, she thinks it's better if it would be afterwards. But generally I agree with the grader that it is an excellent paragraph, and I agree that the last sentence is also excellent. Okay, and let's move on to the last paragraph now, and that is the paragraph that starts with the words following the analysis above. This very short paragraph is okay, but I think it could have been improved with the addition of maybe one more sentence. I agree with what the grader said, that maybe the writer could have ended with a warning or a prediction about what will happen in the future if we don't fix this problem. Maybe the student was rushed at the end of the essay and didn't have time. That's why it's very important for students to practice and learn to budget your time when you're writing, because you want to be able to write a good, strong conclusion, because those are the last words that your grader will read before he or she gives you a score, and you want to leave them with a good impression of your writing.
Excel Language School. A real passion for learning.